Today we're working on a 2014 Volkswagen Jetta. It's a 2.0 liter TDI, letter code CJAA. The customer's complaint is it has a check engine light. I think they said it was something relating to the turbo. We're also doing a timing belt on it while it's here. That won't be a part of this video. We will be diagnosing the check engine light. Normally, since this is a Dieselgate car, I try to convince the customer to take it to Volkswagen under warranty. They said it has too many miles to go back to Volkswagen under warranty. They checked. It only has 135,000 miles though, so I'm not sure about that, but we might punch it into the Volkswagen website to see what it qualifies for under the Dieselgate warranty, and we'll look into this check engine light.
Okay, let's get in here and get the engine trouble codes out of here. We have 3 trouble codes: P2563 for turbocharger boost control position sensor circuit, implausible, intermittent, and P00AF, actuator module for turbocharger intermittent, and the third one is it's the same code, just a second instance of the same code. So let's go drive the car and see what happens, and make some checks on the turbocharger boost control position sensor circuit. Okay, on this one we have the turbo position sensor trouble code. I've decided to clear the code before I drive it. I have saved the code, so I have it in record. Actually, there's 2 codes. There's 2 instances of the same code. And let's see if this reoccurs when we drive it.
Okay, with just a short drive, the glow plug light started flashing, and let's scan it.
Okay, the glow plug light is flashing. Let's see what trouble codes are in here. P00AF and P2563. Those are the same codes that are in there before, so obviously it doesn't take much driving to get them to reoccur. I think it either reoccurred in the parking lot or just when I came out of the parking lot.
Okay, this is our turbo actuator. You see it has a vacuum line running to it, and there's a diaphragm in there that moves the variable geometry turbo. And then this is a position sensor for the actuator, and there's 3 wires there. And over there is a N75 that controls the vacuum to that actuator. That looks new, so I think somebody's been working on this before and replaced this for some reason. I shouldn't touch it. So I'm going to disconnect the vacuum hose from here. And I'm going to hook in my vacuum pump. Now at this point we can check the turbo vane position sensor. Now this is a 3-wire sensor, and the thing about 3-wire sensors, they're very consistent. There's almost always a power, a ground, and a signal return. So if I back probe this one, I get 5 volts, and that's the power. It's very common for these sensors to have a 5-volt reference, and so it's powered with 5 volts. And then if I check the ground, it should be 0 volts, and that's very close to 0 volts. And then the signal return should be relative to the position of the sensor. If I can get in there on the thing. And so it's where the sensor is now, it's 3.49 volts. Hopefully I can get this thing to where you can see it. And now I'm going to take my vacuum pump and I'm going to pump it up. And as you can see, the sensor voltage is changing relative to how much vacuum it is. That's relative to the position of the sensor, the position of the actuator, I mean. And as I pump it up, full vacuum, it's approximately 0.7 volts, which I think is normal. I think the sensor's range is 0.5 volts to 3.5 volts. So I think that's normal. 0.7 is probably close enough. I'm not 100% sure of that. I just bumped the trigger there to release the vacuum, so I'll release the vacuum all the way and do it one more time. So as you can see, that sensor seems to be working and showing the computer the position of the actuator. So why do we have a position sensor trouble code? Well, I'm checking it with vacuum from here, from the vacuum pump. What if there wasn't vacuum making it from the N75 to the actuator? Well, that would be pretty easy to check with a bidirectional control, putting our vacuum gauge in here. But there's a check I want to show you first. I'm going to put this back on, and then we're going to go back to the scan tool and try another test.
Okay, I wanted to do the voltage checks with the hand vacuum pump at the boost actuator sensor first, because that makes it clear what's going on. It simply senses the position of the actuator. The next check I'm going to do here is in the engine computer, and it basically does the same thing, only semi-automated. So you go to basic settings. Car has to be running. I have the car running, by the way. I'm inside the car. And you go down here to Turbo Boost Control Solenoid Adaptation, and when you click that, it shows you in this field the position of the actuator. Now that's showing 1.5 volts because that's where it's at right now. And as I clicked on, what it's going to do is it's going to turn the N75 on and off, and that'll change the position of the actuator, which will change this voltage. So I'm going to go ahead and click on, and you might hear the engine idle go up a little bit. I'm not doing that with my foot. The car does that automatically. And so you see the sensor position dropping down to about 0.7. And then after it turns it off, it'll go back up to 3.5. And you can see it turning on and off over here. I believe so anyway. So it's almost up to full duty cycle of 93%. And that makes it at 7.6 volts, and then it basically turns it off and it goes to 3.5 volts. And so that tells you a lot of information. That tells you the actuator's moving, that tells you the sensor's working, it tells you it has vacuum to the actuator, it tells you the N75 is capable of controlling that vacuum, it tells you the N75 has a vacuum supply, it tells you the computer's turning the N75 on and off. There's a whole ton of information there. So the question is, why isn't this thing working? It should be working. We're seeing the N75 turned on and off. We're seeing the voltage change. So at this point, I don't know. We will do some further checks, and I will let you know what I find. Okay, anytime I have a trouble code and I don't immediately know the solution for it, I will use Rostech's site as an information database. And so we have trouble code here of 009571 and 000175. Now I'm going to punch the second one in first because I've already looked and I know what's there. So we'll go to Rostech's site and we'll punch in 000175. And the information that we get there is always good. For instance, right here, click that, and we end up with actuator module for turbocharger 1 stuck. Possible symptoms, possible causes, possible solutions. And as I scroll down, right off the bat right here, I get N75 connector plugged into the wrong component. Now, the reason they're saying that is because there's some matching components there. The plugins are the same, and down here they get more clear. And so what it shows here is verify the N75 connectors plugged into the N75 with a wiring diagram, because it can be plugged into the N79, the PVC heating element. It's also saying verify the vacuum lines are good, test the VNT, apply vacuum to it, and watch measuring block 120. Engine off, no vacuum, should read 3.5. Engine off, 17 inches of mercury, should drop to about 0.7 volts. That's exactly what we have. So at this point, it seems like everything's working. We basically should probably drive this and look at the group 120 right here and see what it reads while we drive it. We need to take a look at it to make sure that the PVC isn't plugged into the N75, and I'll show you that on camera.
Okay, here we have our N75, and it does look new. Somebody's replaced it at some point, and the lock tab is broken on it. And this will reach down here where the PVC connector is, but it would almost require this thing to be rotated. But this does rotate. I'm not going to be able to do it right now, but that does rotate, and it can rotate to where this will plug into it. And obviously the PVC wire is long enough to reach over here. Now, they are not switched on this car, so that is not the cause of our problem. But on an interesting side note, I'm seeing right there that the wires are broken to the PVC connector. Now, here's how I determined that they weren't switched. I looked at my wiring schematic. Now, on our N75, we have yellow and black and brown and yellow. Let's go to our schematic. It's always nice on the schematic when there's 5 pages of information. Here is our wastegate bypass regulator valve. That's our N75, or boost control solenoid is what I would call it. And it's a yellow and black wire and a brown and yellow wire. That matches what we have. Quick solder repair there, and we'll plug that back in and see what happens. I'll tape those wires up later. Obviously that's our N75, not reversing them here. I want to point out that there was no trouble code for the PVC system heater, even though the wires were completely broken. And that's normal. I've noticed that before on other vehicles, that Volkswagen really doesn't care whether that's working or not. They ain't going to trigger a trouble code for it. So I'll tape those wires up later. Make sure I'm not reversed here. I got the N75 where the N75 belongs. This vacuum hose is back in there. And let's take the car for a test drive and see if it's fixed.
Okay, I figured I better clear this code before I drive it, because if I'm going to hope that it's fixed by that wire repair, we probably need to clear the code to see if it reoccurs. It has 4 trouble codes this time. Let's see what they are. 00175. Now, I've had that thing unplugged a few times, so I'm not sure. I probably triggered it by unplugging the N75. Yep, there it is right there. I triggered that trouble code, so I'm going to just clear them all. Done, go back. See if anything reoccurs immediately. And I'll start the car. And we'll go back in after we started the car and see if any codes reoccur. And we'll go for a short test drive. Now, if you remember, when we did this test drive before, the glow plug light started flashing almost immediately. I think it was before we made it out of the parking lot. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, I did not even make it out of the bay before the light started flashing.
What I'm trying to do right now is get a feel for when the car actually triggers the trouble code. I'm inside the car, obviously. I have VADCOM running. I'm looking at the dash. The glow plug light is not flashing. I have cleared the code. The code is not present. And what I'm looking at here is the voltage coming from that sensor. It says 1.4 right now. Now, the light isn't flashing, and I guess I can go and show you that there's no codes right now. See, there's no codes. And then we go back to measuring blocks 120. And we're still at 1.4 volts. So that means the position of the sensor is relative to 1.4 volts, whereas you saw earlier 0.7 was one end of the range of motion and 3.5 was the other end of the range of motion. So I've noticed a couple times that when I actually put it in gear is when the trouble code triggers and the glow plug light starts flashing. Some things are happening when you put it in gear, like the motor moves a little bit, and so you have the potential for wires to chafe and ground out or to short to each other. You also have the potential for vacuum hoses moving around and things like that. So I'm wondering if that has something to it, but I just don't know at this point. So I'm going to try and reproduce the issue. I'm going to put it in gear and see if this voltage here on this 1.4 volts changes. Move this down a little bit. See if that 1.4 volts changes any. So I'll take it out of gear now. I have to move the computer a little bit here. There's stepping on the brake and put it in gear. And the code did not reoccur. I'm going to back up a foot or so. Ooh, the brakes are awful hard just then. Okay, the light just started flashing. I wasn't paying attention to the voltage over here, but obviously it went to 3.4. I think that means that it's not controlling it. The actuator shuts off vacuum, and so it goes to 3.4 because it has no vacuum to it. Okay, I went back in and cleared codes. I'm now looking at the voltage on the actuator again, on the sensor, and I'll start the car. No light flashing. Voltage going down. I think that means that our actuator, our solenoid is controlling voltage to the actuator. So we end up at about 1.7. So I'll put it in reverse again. Wait a second, did you see that? When I'm stepped on the brake, the voltage changed. Our light is not flashing. Voltage is fluctuating quite a bit right there. Okay, our light started flashing just now. So our voltage was fluctuating, and then the light started flashing. So maybe that fluctuation in voltage is the problem. So
This video's ended up way too long. It's going to end up being like 26 minutes. Put down in the comments below if you like long videos with like 26 minutes long, or like 15-minute videos with a part 1 and a part 2 also. Also, put your guess down in the comments what you think it is. See you in part 2. If you like this video or learned anything from it, click the like button. And if you want to contribute to the continued production of these videos, find the donate icon on my website at www.kansascitytdi.com. And please do me a favor, don't call me for tech help. Post your questions in the comments down below. And if you want to watch some more of my videos, there's one right there and one right there. And don't forget to subscribe.